The Triarch Dominion had ruled for so long that history itself had bent around their pride. Across the spiral arms of the galaxy, their banners hung from the ruins of conquered civilizations, reminders that resistance was meaningless and that mercy was weakness. For 3,000 years, they believed themselves unchallenged, the inheritors of the cosmos. They built cities on the bones of those they crushed. Their fleets burned the skies of 100 worlds, and they spoke of themselves as gods. But even gods grew curious. For centuries, whispers had lingered among Dominion scholars, rumors of an ancient world at the center of the old charts, a place where the first species of the Second Age had risen, thought, and fallen. A world that had once been called Earth, the cradle of humanity. To the Triarchs, the story was a myth, a cautionary tale about arrogance and self-destruction. Humanity, they said, had burned itself to ash in its hunger for dominance long before the Dominion's birth. Their monuments were dust. Their sun, extinguished. Sol was a dead system, a relic swallowed by time. And yet, there were anomalies. Deep space probes returning from the old sectors reported readings that defied explanation. Energy pulses, rhythmic and artificial, resonating faintly from the direction of Sol. Dominion science vessels dismissed them as cosmic background distortions, until one of their fleets charting the nearby sectors simply vanished. No distress signal, no wreckage, only a final, fragmented transmission. The light moved. The High Command of the Dominion did not take kindly to mysteries. They summoned Admiral Cortal, the youngest and most ruthless of their warlords, and charged him with investigating the Sol region. To the Council's amusement, Cortal accepted with enthusiasm. He saw it as an opportunity to etch his name into the annals of conquest. If he could bring proof of humanity's ruin, or better yet, retrieve their ancient technology, his name would stand beside the founders of the Dominion itself. 500 ships assembled at the staging point of Vetra 9. Dreadnoughts, cruisers, carriers, all brimming with weapons and arrogance. Their engines lit up the void like a second sun. When they tore open subspace and surged toward Sol, it was as if the galaxy itself shuddered. They expected glory. They expected treasure. They expected triumph over the ghosts of a dead species. But what awaited them was silence. The fleet emerged from subspace at the edge of the system, engines cutting power as their sensors reached out. The sun still burned, dim but alive, its light weak and cold as if filtered through a veil. The planets lay where they always had: Mercury, scorched and lifeless; Venus, wrapped in poison; Mars, red and broken. And Earth, the third planet, floated in the void, cloaked in gray clouds and shadow. It should have been dead. Every reading said so. No biosignatures, no active transmissions, no artificial satellites. Just static. And yet, even through the haze, something pulsed faintly from the planet's surface, a rhythmic signal, like the echo of a heartbeat. Cortal stood on the bridge of his flagship, Vex Eternal, watching the data scroll across the holographic displays. The silence pressed against him like a weight. "How long since our probes last transmitted?" he asked. 7 cycles, replied his sensors officer. All contact ceased the moment they entered low orbit. No trace of impact, no destruction signatures. Recover the last transmission. The crew obeyed, replaying the fragmented signal. A hiss of static filled the bridge, then a faint voice, a human voice, ancient and raw, spoke 3 words: "We told you." The audio cut. Cortal's crest bristled. "Artificial playback?" "Unknown," the officer said. The message repeats at 3.7-minute intervals, embedded within the ambient noise. It's not a transmission. It's everywhere. Background radiation, magnetic fields, even gravitational fluctuations.
The Admiral frowned. "Everywhere," he echoed, as if the system itself is whispering. He turned toward the viewport. Earth hung there like a dark jewel, its continents faintly visible beneath the shroud. He had seen many dead worlds, but this one felt different. It wasn't empty. It was waiting. "Deploy reconnaissance," he ordered finally. "I want full-spectrum sweeps of the planet and moons. Map every anomaly. If there's anything left of the humans, I want it in my hands." Drones launched in formation, hundreds of them. They streaked across the void toward Earth, their sensors flaring to life. Data streamed in torrents, radiation levels, atmospheric readings, soil composition, until, one by one, their feeds began to distort. Static consumed the screens, replaced by flickering images of shapes moving through darkness. Not ships, not life, just shadows. Then the feeds died. The comms officer's voice trembled. "Signal loss across all scouts. We're blind." Cortal's jaw tightened. "Send another wave. Double encryption."
Minutes later, they too vanished. No interference, no explosion, no trace. Simply silence. Then something changed. The fleet's proximity alarms began to wail. Energy signatures, faint, scattered, appeared all around them, each one pulsing in sync with the faint signal from Earth. They weren't weapons or ships. They were fragments, pieces of metal, glass, and stone, drifting in complex orbits. They surrounded the fleet like a cloud of ash. "By the gods," whispered one of the engineers, "they're arranged." Cortal stared at the readings. The debris wasn't random. It formed rings, layers of orbital patterns so precise they resembled circuitry. He realized then that this was no natural graveyard. Someone, or something, had built this. The Admiral's voice lowered to a growl. "Human relics?" "Perhaps," said his science officer. "Or perhaps defenses." He laughed at that, a low, cruel sound. Defenses? Against whom? The galaxy forgot their name before the first Dominion ship left orbit. They're dust. We are eternal. And yet, even as he said it, the lights on the bridge flickered. A low hum filled the air, not from the engines, but from the walls themselves. It pulsed in rhythm with the signal, seeping through metal and bone. Every crew member felt it, deep in their chest, a vibration that wasn't sound, but sensation, like something enormous stirring beneath their feet. Then, through the static, a voice echoed once more, clear this time, cold and unmistakably human. "Why have you come?" The bridge fell silent. Cortal's eyes narrowed. "Trace it." "We can't," said the officer. "It's coming from everywhere." He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, every console went dark. The hum deepened into a roar that shook the ship. Outside, the stars dimmed. And then, in the void before them, something moved. Slow, deliberate, and vast. The fleet's scanners struggled to focus, unable to define its shape. But as the darkness shifted, Cortal saw it, an outline forming within the black, like a colossal shadow unfolding its wings. The silence was over. And though no one aboard the Dravex Eternal understood it yet, the moment their engines lit the void of soul, they had awakened something that should have slept forever. The Dominion fleet hung motionless in orbit, a constellation of metallic predators glinting against the pale light of Sol. Yet for the first time in recorded history, those predators felt the faint edge of fear. The stars beyond the fleet seemed dimmer now, smothered beneath a veil of static that rippled across their sensors.
The systems complained of interference that no known technology could produce. To the Admiral, it felt like the universe itself was holding its breath. Kortal stood before the massive viewport of his command bridge, staring down at the planet below. The signal still pulsed through every frequency, deep and deliberate, like the heartbeat of a god. "Why have you come?" The words replayed again and again in his mind, not through comms or machinery, but directly inside his skull. Each syllable carried weight, like the echo of thunder rolling across the void. His officers worked frantically, recalibrating sensors, resetting communications relays, but every system they touched refused to obey. "We've been hit with a quantum feedback cascade," one of the engineers barked. "It's rewriting our encryption patterns in real time, almost as if it's mimicking us." "Mimicking?" Kortal repeated, his crest rising with irritation. "Yes, Admiral. The interference adapts faster than we can isolate it. Every attempt to counter the signal just feeds it more data." Kortal's eyes narrowed. "Then stop countering. Observe." The bridge dimmed as the crew froze the data stream on the main holotable. Patterns emerged within the interference, a spiraling web of energy fluctuations looping across multiple frequencies. At first it looked like chaos, but then the patterns began to align, forming distinct geometric symbols. Circles within circles, repeating endlessly, folding in on themselves like a fractal puzzle. "What are we looking at?" Kortal asked. "Not random noise," replied his science officer, Thalin. Her voice trembled with a mixture of fear and awe. "It's a message, a self-organizing code." "A distress beacon?" "No. A response." The Admiral's talons flexed against the command rail. "You mean to tell me the humans, dead for millennia, are speaking to us through this?" Thalin hesitated, then gestured to the readings. "Not necessarily the humans themselves, Admiral, but something of them, something left behind." Kortal didn't like the implication. Artifacts? Possibly, though the scale is inconceivable. The signal is being transmitted simultaneously across gravitational, electromagnetic, and even quantum layers. That means whatever is sending it isn't bound by conventional physics. It's as if the entire planet has become a transmitter. "Then we'll find the source," Kortal growled. "Deploy ground teams. I want eyes on the surface." Within minutes, a dozen landing craft broke formation, streaking down through the thick gray atmosphere. Their descent trails cut through the clouds like fiery scars. The fleet watched as they vanished into the haze. Minutes passed. Then an hour. No transmission returned. Kortal waited. Another hour. Still nothing. Finally, one ship transmitted back. Only a single data packet, fragmented and corrupted, but enough for the Dominion technicians to recover a few seconds of footage. The image flickered to life across the bridge. A landing team stood in what looked like a desolate plain of shattered glass and ash. The horizon stretched endlessly beneath a dead sky, filled with the rusted bones of towers that once reached for the heavens. Then, movement. Something stirred among the ruins. The recording blurred, sound cutting into shrieks of interference, and for the briefest moment, shapes began to rise from the ground. Not mechanical. Not alive. Something in between. The transmission ended with a single word, whispered by one of the soldiers before the feed cut to black. "They're watching." Silence swallowed the bridge. Kortal's claws dug into the railing. "Recover them," he commanded. "Impossible," Thalin replied quietly. "All communication has ceased. The last telemetry shows their life signs spiking. Then, nothing." The Admiral turned sharply. Then we send more. Admiral, send more! Another wave of dropships launched, this time carrying heavier weaponry, accompanied by surveillance drones. The fleet's sensors tracked their descent, but as soon as they broke through the lower atmosphere, all readings dissolved into static. One by one, their signals winked out. And then, from the surface, the signal changed. The rhythmic pulse that had haunted the fleet shifted tempo, faster now, rising in intensity. The geometric shapes on the displays began to transform, rearranging into something new. The computers translated fragments of the message, though the language was crude and broken. "You disturb our dead. You were warned. Leave this place." The words sent a chill through the command deck. The voice wasn't synthetic. It carried tone, cadence, and fury. Thalen stared at the data stream. "Admiral, this isn't residual programming. This is interactive. It's responding to us." Cortal bared his fangs. "Let it respond. Prepare bombardment coordinates." Thalen's eyes widened. "Sir, we don't even know what we're dealing with." "I do not fear ghosts," Cortal snarled. "If the humans left behind some automated defense network, we'll burn it down to atoms." The order was given. Orbiting cruisers shifted position, aligning their cannons toward the planet. Energy surged through the decks as plasma batteries charged. The void filled with the rising hum of destruction. "On my mark," Cortal growled. "Let the galaxy remember who commands it." "Admiral," Thalen whispered, "the signal." "Fire!" The cannons roared. Columns of plasma speared downward, piercing through the clouds and slamming into Earth's surface. Shockwaves rippled through the atmosphere, lighting the planet in a storm of fire. For a moment, it seemed victory was certain, until the flames stopped. Not faded, stopped. The plasma froze mid-descent, suspended above the planet's surface, glowing like a constellation of burning suns. Every ship in the fleet went dead silent as the impossible unfolded before their eyes. The energy began to rise, slowly, deliberately, back toward orbit. Cortal's voice trembled for the first time. What is this?" The fleet's sensors screamed warnings as the energy condensed, forming shapes within the void, long, angular, metallic forms emerging from the darkness. Ships. Human ships. But they were nothing like the relics found in museums or databases. These vessels were immense, forged from materials the Dominion couldn't identify. Their hulls rippling like liquid metal, their silhouettes carved from pure light and shadow. They moved with precision, not through propulsion, but through thought, gliding silently among the Dominion fleet. And then, across every comm channel, a voice returned, ancient, thunderous, and unmistakably human. "You came seeking the grave of humanity. You found it. Now lie within it." The frozen plasma flared to life once more, but this time it didn't fall toward the planet. It turned upward, toward them. The first wave hit in silence, and the Dominion fleet, 500 ships strong, screamed into the dark. The first wave of energy tore through the Dominion fleet like a storm of living fire. Ships that had once blotted out the stars now fell burning, their hulls unraveling in brilliant ribbons of molten alloy. Command networks screamed under the overload, systems cascading into failure faster than any organic mind could comprehend. The void, once filled with the perfect order of Dominion formation, became chaos incarnate. Silent flashes of dying ships, torn apart by forces that should not have existed. Admiral Kortal's flagship, the Vengeance of Ulkar, shuddered as invisible currents battered its shields. Warning sigils flared red across every display, while the voice of the tactical officer broke through the static. "Admiral, they're not using conventional weapons. The energy signature, it's bending our shields inward. We're absorbing our own power." Kortal's claws clenched. Counter it. Redirect the field harmonics. Impossible. The energy is reactive. It's adapting to every frequency we emit. Then shut it down. The ship fell into near-total silence as the shields died, leaving the Vengeance naked before the void. Through the viewports, Kortal saw the impossible. Those spectral human ships gliding effortlessly through the debris field, untouched by physics, their forms rippling like reflections on dark water. They were not simply machines, they were echoes, fragments of consciousness and memory given form. Thaylin stood at her station, transfixed. "Admiral, these signatures, they're not ships, at least not in the traditional sense. They're quantum echoes." Kortal turned, rage flaring in his eyes. "Speak sense." She swallowed. When the humans died, their technology must have reached an apex, an understanding of existence beyond material form. These vessels, they're built from patterns of light, gravitational resonance, and memory itself. They remember how to exist. "You mean they're ghosts?" Thaylin nodded slowly. "If ghosts could kill fleets." Kortal turned back to the viewport, watching as the spectral armada drifted silently between the wrecks of his fleet. Every Dominion transmission was drowned beneath a rising chorus of whispers. Thousands, maybe millions of overlapping human voices speaking in a frequency that wasn't sound, but thought. The words rippled through the mind, carrying weight and sorrow in equal measure. "You should not have come." Every ship that still functioned opened fire, plasma bolts and rail projectiles screaming into the dark. But the human vessels didn't evade. They simply let the attacks pass through them. Each shot dissolved into static mid-flight, reduced to dust by invisible forces. And then the counterattack came, not in the form of fire, but silence. It began as a pulse, soft and rhythmic, emanating from the ruins of Earth itself. Every Dominion ship's lights flickered, every system faltered. The hum of machinery died. Life support, gravity, even oxygen flow ceased. The fleet hung dead in the void, powerless. The voice returned, clearer now. "Once we reached beyond the stars. We dreamed, we built, we became more than flesh. We asked the universe for understanding. The universe answered, and it demanded everything." Thaylin's eyes filled with horror. "They didn't die," she whispered. "They ascended. Humanity didn't vanish. They merged with the very fabric of reality." Kortal's breath came shallow, his heart pounding in the vacuum of sound. "Then why attack? Why destroy?" "Because you woke the dead," the voice replied, not through comms, but inside every living mind aboard every Dominion ship. And the dead remember what it is to fear. The Vengeance of Ulkar shuddered violently. The viewports flared white as the spectral fleet moved. Beams of light extended from their hulls, not weaponry, but tendrils of energy that latched onto the Dominion ships. Where they touched, metal turned translucent, atoms unbinding as if being rewritten. Crews screamed as they watched walls fade into mist, controls melt into nothing. Thaylin turned to the Admiral. "We need to retreat. If we can escape beyond Sol's influence, perhaps—
Retreat? Kortal's voice was ragged. We are the Dominion. We do not flee from phantoms.
Then we die for arrogance, she said softly. The Admiral froze as something impossible occurred outside the viewport. Earth itself began to move. The shattered continents and ashen oceans seemed to shift, not physically, but perceptually. It was as if the planet's image was unraveling, revealing something beneath. Beneath the crust of ruin and dust, light pulsed. Vast circuits of energy spanning continents, running deep into the core. Earth wasn't a corpse, it was a machine. The Dominion ships that still lingered began transmitting frantic data. Energy levels spiking off the charts, gravitational fluxes reversing polarity, light bending where it shouldn't.
The planet, Thalen whispered, it's not just transmitting, it's awakening.
From the depths of the dead world, something enormous began to rise. The clouds parted as a structure the size of a moon ascended into orbit, wrapped in lightning and shadow. Its surface shimmered with impossible detail, thousands of glyphs carved in light, shifting like living script.
Kortal stared, speechless. What is that?
A sentinel, Thalen murmured, or a god. The structure pulsed once, and the Dominion fleet, what little remained, felt the wave hit them. It wasn't energy, but information, raw and overwhelming. It poured through every circuit, every neuron, a flood of human thought that shattered lesser minds. Officers fell to their knees, bleeding from their eyes and ears. Their minds invaded by visions of cities burning, oceans boiling, the last humans whispering to the stars. Then came the final image, a human hand reaching into the void, grasping the fabric of existence and twisting it. And the voice spoke again, low and calm. You made graves of our skies. You salted our soil with arrogance. But humanity endures, not in flesh, not in empire, but in memory. And memory cannot die. The spectral fleet began to merge with the colossal structure, streams of light folding into its surface like rivers returning to an ocean. The pulse of power grew unbearable. Kortal, trembling, turned to his crew. We must withdraw. Send the order. Any ship with engines, run. Thalen didn't move. Her gaze was distant, her voice hollow. Run where, Admiral? They are everywhere. Every star, every particle of dust. The galaxy itself hums with their presence. The Admiral raised his hand, but his command died on his tongue. Outside, the massive construct turned its gaze upon them, 1,000 eyes of light focusing on the vengeance of Ulkar. For a heartbeat, the universe held still. Then the human construct spoke one last time, its tone no longer wrathful, but mournful. You feared what we might become. Now you understand. A flare of white consumed the void. When the light faded, there was nothing left of the Dominion fleet, only drifting shadows and the faint whisper of a signal fading back into the silence of Sol. And as it faded, a single line echoed across every receiver in the galaxy. Humanity sleeps still, but not forever. The destruction of the Dominion fleet should have ended it. Every tactical model, every war doctrine in the galaxy agreed. When the armada that anchored Dominion authority falls, the Empire fractures. Yet, as the surviving ships limped away from Sol, they discovered something far worse than defeat. The void itself had changed. For generations, the Dominion had mapped every ripple of dark space, every drift of cosmic radiation, every trace of energy between the stars. But now those maps were wrong. Entire sectors showed interference that hadn't existed before. The same strange pulse that once emanated from Earth now echoed faintly across light years. It was faint, but everywhere, like a heartbeat carried through the bones of the galaxy.
Admiral Cortal's last transmission before his fleet vanished had warned them. The humans are not gone. They are the dark between stars. Most dismissed it as the ramblings of a dying commander, until the signals began.
The first was detected by the observatory world of Grath 9. A technician noticed a fluctuation in their quantum field readings, a recurring harmonic buried beneath the background noise. He isolated it, amplified it, and listened.
It was a human voice.
We remember. The recording lasted less than 3 seconds before every system on Grath 9 overloaded, frying entire planetary grids. When engineers attempted to analyze the wreckage, they found something inexplicable. The machines hadn't been destroyed by heat or power surge. They had decayed. Circuits, metal, and even crystal components had aged thousands of years in an instant. Across the Dominion's outer colonies, similar events unfolded. Fleets reported phantom readings of ships appearing on their long-range scans, vessels shaped like Terran designs but built from starlight and dust. Attempts to approach them ended in disaster. Navigation systems would fail, coordinates would twist, and crews would find themselves light years from where they began, memories scrambled by something that bent both time and thought. On the core world of Hraxus Prime, the Senate convened in panic. The holoscreens filled the Great Chamber, projecting fractured data streams from dozens of sectors. In each, the same phenomenon: ghost signals, faint whispers, visual distortions in space that formed, for an instant, human silhouettes. Chancellor Vrax stood before the council, his voice trembling. We burned their world to ash. We erased their legacy. We cleansed their archives. Yet still they speak. How? A lone figure, Scholar Than, an expert in pre-collapse human culture, stepped forward. You did not burn their world, Chancellor. You set fire to a body long dead. What you witnessed at Sol was not resurrection. It was defense, a mechanism older and deeper than empire.
The Chancellor sneered. You believe in myths?
Thane shook his head. Not myths, code. He raised his hand and displayed a projection of Earth's signal matrix. The humans encoded themselves into reality's quantum substrate. They made memory a physical property of the universe. Their species' thoughts, emotions, even their rage, it's imprinted on the fabric of existence. The senators erupted in disbelief, voices overlapping in chaos. Thane pressed on. When the Dominion disturbed their grave, they didn't awaken consciousness. They triggered an automatic response. But now that response is spreading, like an infection. The Chancellor pounded the dais, then find a cure. There is no cure for remembrance, Thayan whispered. The lights dimmed across the chamber. Every display flickered, showing static that slowly resolved into a face. Human, ancient, scarred, eyes burning with cold fire. The voice that followed was clear, resonant, and immeasurably calm. You built empires on our ashes. You forged crowns from our bones. But even ash remembers the flame. Panic erupted. Communications officers tried to sever the signal, but it wasn't coming from anywhere. It was already inside every system, every processor, every data crystal. The face continued speaking. "You are not the first to rise. You will not be the last. But every civilization leaves ghosts. We are yours." Then the transmission ended. In the days that followed, chaos consumed the Dominion. The great fleets no longer obeyed centralized command. Entire shipyards went silent as their automated systems refused to activate. Planets reported strange occurrences, structures shifting overnight, lights flickering in patterns that resembled Terran Morse code, voices whispering through comm channels in extinct human languages. A mining outpost orbiting the gas giant Rello 7 sent a final message before vanishing. "The shadows on the ice, they move when we don't." Worse still, the Dominion's enemies, the smaller galactic powers that had long feared its dominance, began withdrawing from expansion. They weren't celebrating the Empire's fall. They were hiding. The signals had reached them too. One particularly chilling report came from the Cathar coalition. A scout vessel near the Perseus Rift detected what appeared to be a derelict human dreadnought drifting between stars. Its hull bore no seams, no engines, no markings, only smooth obsidian metal that shimmered with faint light. When they attempted to scan it, the readings came back not as matter, but thought. Then the ship turned. It didn't fire weapons, it simply looked at them. Every crew member aboard the Cathar vessel screamed as their memories were overwritten. When rescue ships arrived, they found the entire crew dead, faces frozen in expressions of awe and terror. The logs contained only a single entry, written in trembling script. "They're not dead. They're dreaming, and the dream is growing." Within months, the Dominion collapsed. Core worlds descended into silence, fleets mutinied or fled, and hyperspace routes filled with spectral interference. Every night sky across the surviving colonies seemed wrong. Constellations shifted, stars moved, not naturally, but deliberately, as if something vast and ancient were rearranging them from the other side of time. On the outer rim, a group of refugees gathered in a derelict freighter, staring out into the dark between systems. They had no government, no leaders, only fear. And then one of them whispered what all had begun to suspect. "The stars! They're not moving. They're forming words." And they were. Across light years, billions of stars flickered in unison, aligning into vast patterns that no telescope could mistake. A message written in fire and silence, carved across the face of the cosmos. "Do not forget the dead." The galaxy fell quiet. Trade, war, diplomacy, all stopped. Even the bravest captains refused to enter deep space, for the dark now hummed with faint human echoes. Sensors picked up heartbeats where there should be none. Old Terran songs played faintly on comms no one touched. Humanity had become more than a species. It had become an idea, a pattern written into the foundation of existence. And that idea had awoken to defend itself. In the hidden corners of the void, some whispered of the Grave Fleet, a vast armada of spectral ships that drifted between galaxies, silent sentinels of a dead race. They didn't attack, they didn't speak, they only watched. But others said they did more than watch. They waited. For months, no transmission escaped Sol. The fleets that had entered had vanished into a silence so absolute it seemed to swallow light. Empires argued and fractured over what to do. Some said to abandon the system and let the ghosts of humanity rot. Others demanded vengeance. But vengeance required understanding, and understanding demanded courage, or desperation. When the Confederacy's High Command finally authorized the recovery expedition, it was less an act of bravery and more a challenge thrown at the abyss, a demand that the unknown yield its truth. The task force was small but elite, 30 ships, each fitted with autonomous sentience dampeners, EMP shielding, and experimental energy filters designed to block whatever had destroyed the others. Their commander, Admiral Vec Thurn, was not a believer in legends.
He believed in engines, mathematics, and weapons. When his fleet arrived at the periphery of Sol, he recorded in his log, "Humanity is gone. The system is dead. We will collect proof and end this superstition." The first signs of wrongness began before they even crossed the heliopause. Sensors recorded an electromagnetic storm that wasn't a storm, a pulse pattern repeating every 90 seconds, structured, deliberate, almost melodic. Could it be natural? His science officer asked. Nothing natural speaks in rhythm, Vec muttered. They decoded fragments. It was binary, but it wasn't a distress call or a message. It was heartbeat data. Human heartbeats, millions of them, layered, slowed, distorted into a symphony of defiance. And as they approached Neptune's orbit, the ships began to drift off course, not from malfunction, but because navigation itself was lying. Distances bent, signals echoed from directions that didn't exist. Timestamps came back inverted. A scout frigate blinked out of formation, reappeared 12 minutes later, and reported seeing the fleet ahead of them, though they were still behind. The commander ordered a halt, but by then it was too late. They crossed the orbit of Mars and saw the wreckage of the first Dominion fleet. It floated like a mausoleum. Ships hung frozen, some turned inside out, as though space itself had inverted around them. Their hulls bore no scorch marks, no signs of battle, just a deep crystalline layer, black and mirror smooth, like obsidian. When probes tried to scrape samples, they disintegrated before returning. The data fragments showed something impossible, neural activity. The hulls themselves were alive. The fleet drifted among the corpses of machines that had become something else. Vec's voice, when he gave the next order, trembled slightly. Set course for Earth. When they entered the inner system, the light changed. The sun was still there, but dimmer, as if filtered through glass. Jupiter's storms were gone, replaced by perfect stillness. Saturn's rings glowed faintly blue, and then Earth. No one expected what they saw. It was whole, not scorched, not shattered, reborn. The oceans glimmered with bioluminescence that pulsed in waves. The continents were veined with faint geometric light, like circuitry written into the crust. Clouds moved in exact patterns, like the breathing of a sleeping giant. The planet looked alive in ways no world should. They detected no radio chatter, no industry, no orbiting satellites. But the surface was warm, warmer than physics allowed. "Open channels," Vec ordered. "Let them know we come in peace." No answer came, but something else did. Across every frequency, a human voice, ancient and young, male and female, one and many, whispered, "We know you." The voice echoed inside every mind aboard, bypassing comms entirely. Panic rippled through the fleet. AI cores began to loop, their logic trees collapsing under recursion. "Shut them down," screamed engineers, but the systems refused to comply. And then the lights dimmed. Not just on the ships, across the stars themselves. In that dimming, shapes began to rise from the planet's atmosphere. They were not ships. They were forms, angular, immense, crafted of obsidian and light, rising like leviathans born from the mantle of Earth itself.
Their surfaces rippled with faces, human faces, flickering like memory fragments. "They're scanning us," someone shouted. But the scan was not external. It was inside their minds, their histories, their fears. "You mock our graveyards," the voice said again, "but graves are only for the dead." Vec watched as his fleet fired everything they had. The void lit with energy so bright it should have erased continents. But every shot vanished into the black halos surrounding the shapes. The energy did not explode. It was absorbed, reflected, transformed. And when the light returned, it wasn't weaponry anymore. It was song. Music made of thunder and light, a requiem so powerful the crew fell to their knees, bleeding from their eyes. The shadows struck, not with weapons, but with silence. One by one, the fleet's systems died. Crews screamed as gravity turned against them, as their own reflections reached out from the glass of their helmets. Admiral Vec stared out the viewport as his command ship cracked open like an egg. "We only wanted to understand," he whispered. The voice that answered him was not angry. "And now you do." His ship folded into itself, vanishing without explosion, without debris. Only the echo of his final heartbeat lingered in the static. When the galaxy listened again, Sol was quiet. But its stars, they were moving. Not orbiting, not drifting, moving with intent. Fleets across the spiral arms began to report seeing constellations rearrange themselves, human star patterns where none should exist. And on worlds where the dead had mocked humanity, nights grew long and strange, and whispers filled the static of every transmission. A single message appeared on every known frequency, written in Terran binary: "Do not disturb the dead, for they no longer sleep." In the following centuries, no one approached Sol again, not because they feared its wrath, though they did, but because some nights, from the edge of telescopes and deep space arrays, the system seemed to stare back, and sometimes, faintly, from the darkness where Earth had once burned, came the sound of human laughter, low, distant, eternal.